Good morning, Dog Nation. I am Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. We are so jam-packed for a fun show today. Two great guests. It's the former Georgia quarterback, Jake Fromm, showing up before we're done today. Great to catch up with Jake. He's got some interesting things to talk about, as he always does. Also, Terrence Edwards, as per usual on a Thursday. We've got some good news to celebrate for Terrence Edwards. He's got a brand new job. He is now a Georgia high school football head coach. That is certainly a great distinction for him, perhaps long overdue. Glad to see Terrence running his own program here now, and we'll talk to him more about that here coming up a little bit today there as well. Also in the program, a little bit of a follow-up to a topic we discussed yesterday. The Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, I think is demonstrating one of the things that truly makes Georgia a special program. We'll address that. And off the top of the program today, some very strong words of praise for one of the newest Georgia Bulldogs. And it's a guy that the Dogs took away from those lousy, stinking Gators. So you know we love all of that. So what do you say we start right there? It's DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Merriweather and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. Find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Oh, if you're a lousy, stinking Gator, you are not going to like the way we're starting today's program, because one of those players, and there are many of them, of which there are many players in the Georgia roster that Georgia has taken from Florida. A lot of praise for him right now, and I think it does set us up to sort of begin that look at what makes this 2024 season for Georgia so much fun, so enjoyable, same results, same expectations perhaps for UGA this upcoming season, but a lot of new faces in order to help get that done. The guy I want to talk about right now is running back Trevor Etienne. And the belief that Trevor Etienne can be a very big impact player for Georgia in kind of a new-look Georgia backfield. And frankly, a little bit of a reinvented Georgia offense, obviously kind of post-Brock Bowers. We've talked a lot about Ladd McConkey this week. Post-Ladd McConkey, there are some playmakers we've gotten very used to seeing doing big things for Georgia. They're not going to be here anymore, so the need to figure out what's next is an important part of the offseason conversation here for Georgia, and there is growing belief that a big part of what is next for Georgia does include the former Florida Gator Trevor Etienne. Let me show you this from our friends over at CBS Sports. Will Backus is the writer on this. They were highlighting transfers for each of the SEC teams, and Backus had some very strong things to say about Etienne. I'm going to kind of read the whole thing to you here just for a moment, just to sort of set up exactly how impressed CBS is with Etienne's arrival to Georgia. Backus saying that Georgia is very selective in the transfer portal. That's definitely true. He goes on to say you can afford to be that when you recruit and retain talent at an elite level like Kirby Smart has done. That's also true as well. Backus goes on to say, but the Bulldogs are set to lose their two top rushers, in Dajan Edwards and Kendall Milton. And though there's some young talent in that room, that's still a lot of production to replace. Backus goes on to say at CBSSports.com, so it's a huge thing that UGA was able to entice Trevor Etienne, the number 2 running back in the 24/7 Sports transfer rankings, to take his talents from rival Florida to Athens, Georgia. Backus goes on to say that Etienne is an electric playmaker. Now, first of all, don't you love the idea of that? Georgia could use all the electric playmakers it can get. If you want to, frankly, score more points against Alabama in the SEC championship, or kind of be back in the national championship conversation. We've pointed out many times before. In 2022, when Georgia won the national championship, Georgia had more plays of 20 or more yards offensively than any team in America. They had 98 of those in 2022. How do you get back to that? You bring electric playmakers into the program, which is what Will Backus from CBS Sports describes Trevor Etienne as being. He goes on to say that he's got a knack for making would-be tacklers miss in open space. He averaged almost 6 yards per carry in his 2 seasons as a Gator, and he gives the Bulldogs some lightning to go alongside their more thunderous options, like the 240-pound rising sophomore Roderick Robinson. So that, once again, that's Will Backus from CBSSports.com, and it is probably true that there is a degree to which that Georgia the last couple of years has probably, in the sort of old cliche of, running backs, thunder and lightning, Georgia has probably, if we're being honest, over-indexed a little bit on the Thunder part and probably underserved us a little bit when it comes to the Lightning part of that. If we're just being honest, that's kind of probably been the profile of the Georgia running back room overall. So bringing in someone like Etienne, who can be the Lightning version of that duo, no matter who he's paired with, whether it be Robinson or Branson Robinson or whoever else, bringing in someone who can kind of provide the Lightning to be the explosive playmaker, whatever it was that he also said there, that's probably a really good and valuable thing that Georgia running backs coach Dell McGee has found a way to add into what is going to be sort of a new look running back room overall. Now, speaking of McGee, he also kind of had his own sort of description of Etienne going back to Miami in the Orange Bowl. This was around that time when, Etienne was sort of first announcing and Georgia was trying to stay focused on the game and trying to figure out whose paperwork is cleared and things like that. So overall, McGee and really nobody else wanted to talk all that much about any of the transfers, but Dell did offer this up as to why a guy like this could be valuable for the program. This is going back to Miami.
I think it just provides leadership. He's played in this league. He's been very productive. I mean, you all watch the tape. He's a very good player.
You can indeed watch the tape and see that for yourself. And as McGee said, productive at the SEC level, and that's what the CBS guy also mentioned there as well. He was ninth in the SEC in rushing last year. He had 753 yards in the season, did average 5.75 yards per carry. And he also had 8 touchdowns there on the ground, too. So you're bringing in a guy who I think has a reasonable case to make to be Georgia's leading rusher here for this particular season. But I want to expand this beyond that just for a minute. I want to expand this beyond just the obvious, hey, this is a guy who's, in a couple of years in the SEC, had some success on the ground and could do more of that, frankly, running behind a much better offensive line at Georgia. I want to expand this beyond to what else could Trevor Etienne do for UGA? And this is where I can't help but think back on something that Kirby Smart said, was it about a year or so ago, a couple summers ago, whenever this was, about the way in which Georgia views the running back position overall. And Georgia, who in so many ways is kind of an NFL factory, guys who play at Georgia at all positions really have justifiable NFL aspirations. Most of them move on to have an NFL career, and the running back position at Georgia is going to be no different. And when you look on Sundays, we got a Super Bowl here coming up with the likes of Christian McCaffrey and players like that. When you look on Sundays about what the running back position is, it's not just 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's not just running between the tackles and trying to get whatever you can get, hard yards on the ground. There is also a nature to which the running back position has become more about the explosive stuff and more about being able to be a weapon in the passing game as well. And as Georgia cultivates all of its players at every position group to be future NFL stars, running back is going to be no different, which means that's what Georgia wants to see from its own running backs as well. This is what Kirby Smart said a couple of summers ago about that very point.
Weapon by how you receive the ball out of the backfield. They want to grow at that. They want to be able to showcase their talents catching the ball out of the backfield. So the NFL asks about, can he catch the ball out of the backfield? Can he be a third down back? Well, we like to grow NFL backs here. So to do that, you got to use them in the passing game.
So that is what Georgia wants to be. They want to be the kind of program that doesn't just have really good running backs, but also has those running backs in the passing game as well, making them weapons there too. And this is one of those moments where I think that you could really add that for Etienne. And if you're looking to see Georgia find a capable way of replacing a Brock Bowers or find a capable way to replace some of these playmakers that are getting ready to move on, seeing what Etienne can do in this fast of the offense, I think becomes a really important thing. In fact, you go back and look at him a year ago, 21 receptions for Etienne at Florida. That's more than Georgia's leading receiving running back last season, which was Javon Edwards, who had 20 catches, but perhaps a little bit more of a projection of what he could be. Go back to the 2022 season for a moment. That's when Kenny McIntosh had 43 catches for Georgia in that national championship season, and we all know that McIntosh was one of Georgia's most important players that season. Is it all that much of a stretch for a player like Etienne, who's drawing the kind of praise that CBS is giving him? Is it all that much of a stretch to say that Trevor Etienne could do those kinds of things for Georgia here this year? I don't think it is. I think that's very much not just a possibility. It may very well be an expectation. CBS called Etienne's transfer to Georgia, they say it's a huge thing, and they talk about him as an explosive playmaker. Dell McGee says you watch watch the highlights, you see that for yourself. Every one of us, I think we would agree. We like what we see for Trevor Etienne. We know Georgia has a need for more capable playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And every indication we have right now is that is exactly what Trevor Etienne sets up to be. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. We're presented today by Merriweather and Tharp, and we're glad to have you with us no matter how you get to us. We start 9:45, 1st and 15, DawgNation.com, and on the DawgNation app. Then we're 10 a.m. after that across all video platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, everything else. Radio, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, podcast, all of the various platforms. Just really happy to have you with us as a part of our program today. It's been so much fun doing the show live again here this week. Such a great thing there. And so thankful to our friends at Merriweather and Tharp who make all of this possible. And Merriweather and Tharp is also your source for Georgia divorce. Now, we've been saying this now for a long time, and Merriweather and Tharp here in 2024 is showing you just how true that is, really expanding their offerings and their services. The great care they've shown for folks in the Atlanta area for such a long time, they are preparing to do that across the entire state of Georgia here right now. Offices opening in Savannah. You got an office coming soon in Athens. You got some really, I think, important extensions of the service that Merriweather and Tharp is already providing. And I am very proud of that because I know how challenging, how scary the divorce process can be. And as I've said before, if I could sort of wave a magic wand and take that away from the folks in my audience, obviously that is what I'd want to do. I can't do that, but the next best thing I can do for you is put you in touch with an advocate who's going to walk alongside you on this journey. And right now, one of the most important things I believe that Merriweather and Tharp can do for you as it relates to all of this is give you a little bit of cost certainty about how this process is going to play out. Because among the list of questions you might have, you know, the how much is this going to cost me is obviously a part of that. And Merriweather and Tharp, I think, has a lot of creative ways they're able to offer that for you. They've got a kind of a range of options here. You know, you perhaps look at your situation and say, this is pretty simple, this is pretty straightforward. And if that's the circumstance you find yourself in, there's a DIY option from Merriweather and Tharp that you might find to be very affordable. You can do that for as low as $99. You can also get the M&T assisted model, which can be as low as $1,749. Or if you want something that's a little bit more hands-on, they have what they call the model M&T level of service, which I think is perhaps the most popular offering they have right now. You can get the payment plan there on that, so you can do that as sort of like a subscription type situation, kind of paying per month as your divorce process is playing out. Or you can also do that as a flat fee if that's what you prefer there as well. Trying to be a little bit more forward-thinking, a little bit more, I think, innovative in terms of providing one of the most important things for you as you go through the divorce process, which is some really key cost certainty. That's what Merriweather and Tharp is all about, trying to think about you and just trying to make a tough situation that much easier. It's why I provide them a hearty recommendation if you find yourself dealing with the divorce process. So please find them online. It's GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. That's the website, GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. Merriweather and Tharp is your source for Georgia divorce. All right, two great guests for us coming up here in a couple of minutes. It's the former Georgia quarterback, Jake Fromm, before we're done today, and it's the former Georgia wide receiver, Terrence Edwards, coming up in just a minute. Prior to that, though, let's go around the doghouse, and I want to follow up on something that we were discussing a little bit yesterday, and that is the advertisement that Georgia is providing for itself in Mobile, Alabama, where the Senior Bowl is taking place. Now, we've had great coverage from DawgNation there. Our Mike Griffith, who joined us yesterday, is there. Kaylee Manziel is on hand, too, providing some of the video coverage. We'll have more of that coming up later on today on the DawgNation video channels. Looking forward to that. Another check-in from Mobile on all of that. One of the things we talked about yesterday was when you see what Ladd McConkey's done thus far and the fact that McConkey is just earning so much buzz from so many of the draft analysts who are on hand, and it really kind of, I think, reinvigorates the conversation that's taking place around Ladd about this was a guy who came to Georgia with like really no accolades whatsoever. You know, almost no one even thought McConkey could even be a major college prospect, much less at a place like Georgia. And yet, ultimately, when McConkey's been healthy for UGA, including national championship seasons, he's really proven to be one of Georgia's most trusted and dependable playmakers. It's an amazing story of, we said, Georgia's ability to scout and see in players at times what other programs have been incapable of seeing. And as we've also said, that McConkey is not the only player at the Senior Bowl from Georgia for whom that sort of seems to be true. Another guy on the other side of the ball that I think you would also say that about is the safety Javon Bullard. You know, Bullard kind of played at an MVP level for Georgia. Obviously, the famous moment where he separated the football from Marvin Harrison Jr., which obviously made the Peach Bowl a little easier to win for UGA. But Bullard was also just a massive player throughout the postseason in 2022, really became an incredible player. And his own journey to get from relative obscurity as a recruit to that kind of performance at the highest level of college football, in its own right, that was kind of a major accomplishment. So it's sort of a follow-up to what we were saying yesterday about Ladd McConkey's journey from where he started to where he is now. Bullard's kind of the same thing. And I want to go back to that Monday, or I guess it would have been a Tuesday morning, that Tuesday morning after the 2022 National Championship game where Kirby Smart was kind of talking about that. We talked yesterday about what Smart has said about Georgia's ability to scout and sort of see the intangible value in addition to the obvious, tangible measurements that are clearly important for every football player, seeing beyond that as well. Kirby talked about that as it related to Javon Bullard. To set us up for where we want to go today, let me let you hear Kirby going back to early January of 2022.
The ability part is important. It's not to be diminished. But sign the right mental makeup and get people that can develop. And how do you measure that, right? Like you can't measure that just on a phone conversation. This guy was sending in videos out in his backyard. He's got a military background. And when you got a military background, you probably got some toughness and some makeup about you that makes you the right way. And we've been fortunate to make some good decisions on kids that maybe other programs didn't value their intangibles enough.
I'm telling you, I really like that a lot. And for me, it goes beyond just the Javon Bullard part of this. It goes beyond all of that, the specific draft prospects of one player or the specific win to turn a prospect like this into such a important part of the overall formula. This goes beyond, so much of that, and it becomes about how it is that Georgia's able to maintain its chemistry. Y'all, we'll talk more about this briefly before we're done. But there is chaos abounding in college football right now. You got coaches leaving. You got players moving about. Most of the time, most programs are spending every minute they have just trying to hold all of this together and to keep it from unraveling. And I'm not telling you that behind the scenes, Georgia doesn't have to do its own version of that from time to time. There's an extent to which that's probably true. What I am saying, though, is that the value that Georgia puts on the intangible part of this and the extra work that it does to sort of seek out guys who can be a positive fit to the team culture overall, every minute that Georgia has spent doing that has been a minute well spent because of the rewards they're able to reap later on because of that. And Javon Bullard is certainly a tremendous example. And it's fun to hear Kirby speaking about Bullard there the way that he did after the national championship game in 2022. And then with Javon Bullard there on hand at the Senior Bowl in Mobile this week, Bullard also had some nice words to say about Kirby Smart, who did stop by, kind of watch some of the proceedings from Mobile here this week. And Bullard was talking to Armai Griffith about what it means to have Kirby there and just kind of what it means to sort of take that next step to move on from Georgia and move towards the NFL. This is really good stuff from yesterday from Javon Bullard. Take a look and listen to all of this.
Man, it's huge, man. It's huge, and really just thankful for him and him being in my life, man, and really just all the tips and knowledge that he's given me, and just being a wonderful coach for me, man. I appreciate him.
How does it feel to be, I guess, away from Georgia? I mean, I think of you as such a program guy, just being in the middle of all of it, and suddenly you're detached from a place that you guys give so much to. Has it felt a little odd not to be in that regimen, I guess would probably be the best word?
I mean, it's definitely hard, man. It's definitely hard. I'm a Georgia boy through and through, and I love Georgia. I gave my all to Georgia, man, and they giving me nothing but love in return. And but that chapter's over in my life, and I'm looking forward to bigger and better things. I appreciate everything that they've done for me, all the fans, all the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations that we went through together, and all the great accomplishments that we had also, man. I'm just extremely blessed and grateful.
Blessed and grateful is what Javon Bullard says he is for his time at UGA. I know Georgia fans feel the very same way about him. It's fun to watch, these guys kind of move on to that next phase. You remember when they were, just starting out as UGA players. You remember when they were just sort of figuring out their way around a college campus. In the case of Bullard, had to work hard just to get on Georgia's radar. But all that hard work is paying off. He's moving on to the NFL, and as he does so, and as he builds what I think can be a very successful NFL career and making himself a very attractive NFL draft prospect, he is also demonstrating some very special things about Georgia in the process on all of that. And that is Around the Doghouse here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. A great celebration of a really, really fun thing as it relates to Javon Bullard. And by the way, as we said before, this afternoon coming up on the DawgNation video channels as we head towards this evening, a special look at what's been going on in Mobile with both Mike Griffith and with Kaylee Manziel. So all of that is going to be really good coming up from Mobile a little bit later on today. We'll also get a chance to hear from Connor Riley on some of that there too. So we are working to catch up with Terrence Edwards. We'll do that here and get ready to do that in a couple of minutes. So why don't we do this? I'm going to kind of pull back from the regular show here for a moment. We'll take a couple of comments. We'll give Terrence a chance to join us, and then we'll kind of roll on with that. And then we'll also hear from Jake Fromm coming up in just a little bit as well. So we'll kind of check in with you here for a moment. Impromptu. We don't normally go comments during the regular portion of the show here, but we'll do some of that today to give Terrence a chance to join us. And we'll, as I said before, hear from Jake Fromm a little bit later on there as well. All right, looking here at the YouTube side of things, I was also getting some chatter. I don't know I think there's maybe some Facebook issues or something like that going on today. Been seeing some of that back and forth here. So not sure if I'm getting the wrong thing there on that, but could be some of that there going on just a little bit. Also, there's some talk over here on the YouTube side about the something seems to be going on here. But on the YouTube side of things, they're talking about the Georgia basketball game. Obviously, a loser last night to Alabama. And it's tough, right, because you have the big lead, and you feel like you're on your way to getting that big home win, much the same way that slightly different circumstances, but much the same way that Tennessee game looked like it was heading towards a victory, and then it ultimately just sort of slips away, and tough circumstances. This is clearly a much better Georgia basketball team than it's been. This is clearly a basketball team that I think is certainly worthy of our attention. It's one of the reasons why we've had a good time talking about them. We've sort of joked about being on the Georgia basketball bandwagon. We're certainly not off that bandwagon. We believe that Saturday against South Carolina, a team that's currently solidly in the NCAA tournament, and I believe the only home loss Gamecocks have on the entire year, came at the hands of the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia has a chance to get that season sweep against South Carolina on Saturday. That'd be very big for this program. But obviously, when you have an opportunity against a kind of a top-rated, among the best in class in the SEC game against Alabama, when that slips away from you, obviously you're kind of left to wonder what might have been. And Georgia's got a couple of those at home here this year with both Tennessee and Alabama, and obviously the comeback that just stopped a little too short against Florida this past Saturday. By the way, Florida last night goes on the road, wins at Kentucky. So we've had a couple of semi-upsets in the SEC here this week with South Carolina beating Tennessee and Florida beating Kentucky. So we've had a couple of upsets in the league here this week. Unfortunately, just one of those not quite as it relates to Georgia. Yeah, so Scott Pete says we're right now not on YouTube, which is also what I'm sort of seeing there as well. So I don't know what's going on with that, but it seems like we're having some issues there. K-Dog says, though, it is to the benefit of DawgNation.com because there are more people chatting over there. So not quite sure necessarily what that is. Yard Dog goes back to the Javon Bullard conversation from a moment ago to say, Kirby, of course, values talent, but you got to win consistently at a high level. You got to have player buy-in to the process. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Kirby has proven to be pretty good at doing, which is getting that buy-in and sort of figuring out how you can keep everybody kind of moving the same direction. Because listen, this is a fact of life. At a place like Georgia, players do have aspirations to play beyond UGA, and of course, players deserve the right to kind of think about their own ambition. Of course, they do. We would want to do the same thing, here there as well. Of course, that's the case. But at a place like Georgia, there's also that requirement because of the attention that Georgia football gets and because of just the size of the program, there's also that kind of requirement and that obligation to try to be the best that you can while you're at UGA. Kirby seems to be really good at making something look easy that's perhaps not so easy, which is, how do you help the development towards that next step in a football career while also getting the best of these players while they're at Georgia, making them proud of their time at UGA and eager to participate in that process. Kirby does a really good job with all of that. All right, why don't we do this here for a moment, because it seems like we got some stuff going on. Let's go ahead and kind of flip-flop our guests here a little bit, if we're able to do this. Let's bring on Jake Fromm right now. We'll try to catch up with Terrence Edwards a little bit later on, then we'll see if we can figure out if everything's okay on the streaming side of this there as well. So how about a chance to move ahead and do a Kroger Fresh Take with Jake Fromm here on DawgNation Daily today. You'll like this, and then Terrence Edwards a little bit later on. Thanks for being with us, everybody. And here on DawgNation Daily, time now for a Kroger Fresh Take as we welcome in the former Georgia quarterback, Jake Fromm, kind enough to join us. So, Jake, you're kind of fully into your offseason here a little bit, or your sort of, I guess, process of, preseason workouts, things like that. How's that going for you here thus far?
Hey, Brandon, what's going on? Thank you for having me. You know what? To be honest, I haven't really thought much of football here the last couple of weeks.
Good.
Just getting back from a duck hunting trip in Arkansas. Got a baby shower coming up.
Wow.
And then we'll start turning the wheels and getting back to football. So got to give yourself a little bit of a break, and that way you can get back and hit it hard and be ready.
That's important for athletes at all levels, right? The idea that we hear this sometimes in youth sports, you can't really do the same thing 12 months out of the year. You kind of need to give your body and your mind a break. And I would say that for professional sports, there's probably a degree to which that's also true as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for myself, when I'm in football mode, man, I hit it hard and I'm ready to roll. But man, getting a break and a little bit of slip away always helps my mind kind of get better and get focused, and it just makes me feel like I can get focused even better during the season.
One of the things we've been watching this week is what's been going on in Mobile, Alabama, where the Senior Bowl is taking place. And in the early portion of the week, a guy that's earned a lot of buzz is Ladd McConkey. Ladd's a guy that you and I have talked about before, but how much does it thrill you to see here, for a guy that battled some injury, but also when healthy showed how good of a football player you could be at Georgia, the fact that he really now seems to be impressing these NFL scouts at the highest possible level. How much fun is that for you to see?
Man, I love it. I love Ladd McConkey. Great football player, great dude. And I think a place like the Senior Bowl is even more beneficial for him, just because coaches are able to be around him and see his approach to the game and how he approaches the day-to-day processes. And I think all he needs is an opportunity to go against some top-tier and top-notch guys over and over. And I think he'll kind of show the league what he's made of and how he's able to make plays even at the next level.
So since Kirby Smart's been the Georgia coach, going back to your era as a player, and since then, there's always going to be a lot of elite recruits and big-time names, and yet there's also guys like Ladd who very unheralded coming out of high school. Javon Bullard was a little bit like that. Bullard's also at the Senior Bowl here right now, too. What do you make of the fact that Georgia, in addition to getting the elite recruits, also seems to be really good at kind of finding players that other programs either didn't notice or didn't properly scout, or whatever the story is? How does Georgia find these diamonds in the rough like what Ladd McConkey kind of became for the Dogs?
Yeah, so I think it's a tale of two halves. I think it's from the recruiting perspective, it's impressive to be able to find these guys who are under the radar and who are really good football players and may have a really, really high ceiling. Well, on the flip side of that, you have to also be really good at developing talent as well. That's, may or may not have been a knock on Kirby in the past of not being able to develop talent. To me, I don't see it. I think he develops talent as good or better than anybody else. Another example, Ladd McConkey, Monty Rice, and plenty of other guys that you could go down the list of who showed up and got better at Georgia and ended up having, getting drafted very high and having a lot of success in the National Football League.
It wasn't that long ago that you were in the same position a lot of these Georgia players are right now, going through the pre-draft process. How stressful is that, both in terms of you hear rumors, you want to impress the organizations, you're kind of maybe hearing this could happen, this team may take you there, and you're trying to figure out what to believe and trying to trust the right people. As a player, what is that like, these Georgia players currently going through all of that?
Yeah, for me, the draft process, there is nothing like that. Everything about you is scrutinized whatever you do, somebody else will have an opinion about it. How you brush your teeth, how you eat meals, whatever it is, somebody's going to have an opinion about it, and it's either going to help you be a good football player or it's not going to help you be a good football player. So it's an intense process. It's one where it'll wear you out mentally and emotionally as much as physically. There's a lot of meeting of people, and you're just trying to be the best version of you for the next 2-3 months until the NFL draft.
I want to finish with this, and I realize you're not currently in a college program, but you obviously, still have a lot of friends around these programs, and I'm sure you're spending as much time around Georgia as you possibly can. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the NCAA is investigating Tennessee again, and some of this seems to stem from what happened when Tennessee was recruiting the top-flight quarterback prospect Nico Iamaleava, who may be one of the better players in the country for this upcoming season. And Tennessee's response seems to be something to the effect of, hold on, all of this stuff is legal now. Why are we getting investigated and punished for something that seemingly now is kind of fair game in the NIL age? And I guess, Jake, my question to you is, how do you think these programs are going to process like the idea of what is legal or not legal in an NIL world, and how do you go back and make sense of what happened a couple of years ago compared to what might be happening now? It seems like an incredibly confusing time to try to be a college football coach or maybe even a college football recruit, perhaps. Do you think that the programs are having as much trouble kind of making sense of all of this as it perhaps seems like it sort of is from the outside?
Yeah, I mean, like what are the rules? I thought everything was fair game now. Basically do whatever you want, and anybody can do anything. So I find it very interesting, and just for me, let's make the rules explicit. Let's make it clear what you can and can't do, and just so everybody is on the same page. I think I think everybody would like to see it. Obviously, from a coach's perspective, from a fan perspective, and then two, I mean, think about the recruits and the parents as well who are going through the process. That's a big impact and that's a big deal. So I think more clarity on the whole situation is good for everybody. And
I'll tell you as a quick follow-up here, the thing that's probably frustrating to the average fan is there is so little kind of on the record facts and truth about some of this kind of stuff. Everything is speculation, and some of it's sort of wild, rampant speculation. Almost no one ever really speaks on the record about any of this, and you kind of hate the secrecy. But when you see stuff like this happen, even though Georgia fans like to see Tennessee get kicked around here, but when you see stuff like this happen, all of a sudden you kind of understand why people choose to be so secretive about this and why no one wants to confirm anything, because deep down nobody knows if this is real or fair or not, and that's kind of promoting that secrecy. And I think the secrecy ends up making all of this just a little bit much more difficult to understand for the fans who are just trying to follow all of this.
Yeah, for sure. The waters are definitely murky, and at first everybody was proud of it, wanted to throw around big numbers, and then kind of back to the old ways a little bit. With just more money involved, and I'd like to see it become a little bit better, a little more efficient.
Well, Jake, we certainly appreciate your time as a part of the Kroger Fresh Take here today. Continue to enjoy your off season, and obviously we'll look forward to having you back here on DawgNation Daily as a part of a Kroger Fresh Take again very soon as well.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. As always, happy to be here.
Really good stuff from Jake Fromm there, our Kroger Fresh Take. And, of course, speaking of our friends at Kroger, another good thing you can try out with them right now, it's the membership model called Kroger Boost. You can check that out online, Kroger.com/Boost, and take advantage of the features and benefits that come your way when you become a Boost member. How about more time to enjoy the things you love? That's what you get when you get free grocery delivery from Kroger. And how about twice the fuel points to save money on the stuff you're already buying at Kroger by helping you save some money at the pump? Always a really good thing there as well. So find out more by checking it out online, Kroger.com/Boost, for more on that today. That's Kroger.com/Boost. And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Thought, we'll kind of roll from one very good guest to another. And this guest has got some great news to share. So let's make sure we dive in and have this conversation right now as the former Georgia wide receiver Terrence Edwards also joins us on the program today, and the brand new head coach there at Mount Vernon. Terrence, first of all, congratulations on a tremendous, well-deserved promotion there for you. I know what a great coach you've been at the personal level, the individual training, but also as a part of great teams, including the reigning 7A state champions in Georgia, and now moving on to produce great success there for Mount Vernon and joining your brother, who's also a very successful head coach here in Georgia there as well. So congratulations. You got the Mount Vernon Athletics pullover on. You're looking good today. Congratulations, and how much fun has it been kind of getting started here as a head coach?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been fun. It's a lot going on right now, just with the transition from Milton to Mount Vernon. Haven't officially started yet, but I've been over just meeting the players, meeting Mount Vernon community, meeting the families, and I can't wait to really get started.
One of the things I've loved seeing on social media the last couple of days is you guys have already had a lot of, college coaches visiting you there, and these are guys that you've obviously got great relationships with. And I know for you, both for the guys you've worked with individually, but also the players you've coached as a part of the teams you've been on, now Mount Vernon, I know for you, that's one of the most important parts, right, is kind of being that liaison that helps a prospective college player connect with these college coaches. And I'll be honest with you, that's one of those things I don't think we can get enough of in life right now, because while I wasn't that kind of player, I do know players who are. And the ability to make a successful transition and feel comfortable as you go through that process, never an easy thing to do. And to have a coach like you that sort of understands the coaching part of it, but also understands the player part of it, I know that's one of those things you love imparting with the teams that you're a part of.
Oh, most definitely. I think that's the biggest attribute that I bring right now, just a network of coaches that I've came in contact with throughout my days as a player, now as a coach, that I could bring to Mount Vernon. I think that's the biggest thing. I told the players during the interview process that I will get you seen if I'm elected as the next head coach at Mount Vernon. As you can see, I've kept that promise to get coaches to come by and shake the players' hands and let them realize that if you can play college football, doesn't matter what level, we're single A private, you'll be able to play on that next level. So I just want to show them that it's possible, and them to see that it's possible, and now they can believe it's possible. And that's what my job is right now, let alone the X's and O's, is getting these kids the opportunity to play on the next level if they choose to do so.
Al Lewis is watching us on Facebook right now. He says, "Good morning to the best quarterback in Waco history." So there you go, there you go, Terrence, getting some love. And people, maybe don't remember this, but you've said before when you were a high school player, you kind of patted yourself after Tommy Frazier, who was doing great things in Nebraska. We think of you as a wide receiver because that's what you were at Georgia. That's what you became in the professional leagues as well. But you go back to your time at Washington County down there, great quarterback, and really Georgia High School Football Hall of Fame quarterback down there for Waco.
Yes, that's me. I'm a point guard and quarterback at heart. I just transitioned to playing receiver because in my day, 25 years ago, wow, that rings a bell. When I graduated high school, there wasn't a lot of 6 feet, 170-pound quarterbacks coming out. And I think today, in this today, with the RPO and the zone read, I definitely would have stayed at quarterback at that time. And I had offers to play quarterback. I tell this story all the time. That Jimbo Fisher was my lead recruit at Auburn, and he wanted me to come follow Damian Craig. So I was going to play quarterback there at Auburn. I was going to play quarterback at Nebraska. So I had quarterback offers. Just at that time, I wanted to be a professional athlete, and I thought receiver was going to be the best avenue for me to get there, and it did, and it worked out just how I would like it to work out. But if I was coming out in today's age, I definitely would stay at quarterback.
That's certainly a fascinating story, and it's interesting to think about what might have been had you made some different decisions on there. And by the way, speaking of people reaching out to us on social media, Terrence, I know you saw this the other day, I believe it was on X, where somebody was referencing Ladd McConkey, the performance he's had at the Senior Bowl here thus far, and he said, as you know, Terrence called this, a couple of years ago there on DawgNation Daily. Indeed, you did. How much fun is it for you right now to watch a receiver that you really did have an eye on very early and see the kinds of things he's doing in Mobile this week where, my gosh, it seems like he's making a very, very strong case for what, he could be here at the NFL level and what he could be as a draft prospect coming up in a couple of months. How much fun has that been for you to see?
I was very excited to see Ladd to perform the way he's performing. I got the opportunity to work with Ladd when he was coming out of high school, and I just saw the traits, and he had the traits to be what he is today, a great route runner, soft hands, the quickness, the acceleration, everything that you need to be a great wide receiver. And I believe that a lot of ex-quarterbacks have the ability to catch the football well because we touch the football every play. So he's been doing his thing, all the things that I thought he could do on the next level, he's doing it. And I just saw it early. He just had that mentality, and he was coachable. So I just saw the traits and just knew that he was going to become this. And Dylan Bell is another one that I taught early. So I love just watching wide receivers perform, and he was one that I saw early on and knew that he would be this type of player.
So I think the obvious next question is, and you mentioned Dylan Bell, with Brock Bowers moving on, which I think we talked about together last week, and Ladd McConkey moving on, and we know how valuable Ladd was when he was healthy. How well positioned do you think Georgia is to kind of cultivate that next generation of playmaker? Dylan Bell probably gets first crack at all of that, but beyond that, how well set up do you think Georgia is for this right now?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and put out my prediction out next year. If Ra Thomas could stay healthy, I think he'll probably be our leading receiver because I just like the skill set that he brings. He's able to run all the routes. He's able to take the top off, and he's able to make the tough catches. So I just believe with a healthy Ra Thomas that he could be our leading receiver. But I just think we have a plethora of receivers that's going to take the weight off losing Brock Bowers. The transfers that we got in, I've already been told that the Vanderbilt transfer is just as fast as Arian Smith. I was like, are you sure? It was like, he's just as fast as Arian Smith. So I'm looking forward to him. Kobe Young, I think his name is, from Miami, is a legit 6'5", 215 pounds with a catch radius that's out of this world. So we have a lot of talent in that room that's going to take the pressure off of losing Brock Bowers.
I want to finish with this. We talked off the top of the program about some praise that Trevor Etienne is getting, and explosive playmaker, things like that, stuff that you kind of already know. And the point that I sort of made is, okay, well, you see that show up in the running game, and Georgia kind of needs that with Javon Edwards and Kendall Milton leaving. But I also think back to what Kenny McIntosh was in 2022 as a really dynamic pass catcher. Had more than 40 catches for Georgia that season. And so if Etienne is the kind of athlete that he's being kind of described as being right now, is this, in your mind, Terrence, also a guy that could be a big weapon for Georgia in the passing attack next season?
You just think about what James Cook and Kenny McIntosh was able to do for us throughout the national championship run, that using that their skill set as a receiver out the backfield. So we didn't have that this year. I love Kenny, I love Dejon and what they brought to the running game this year, but they didn't bring that same explosiveness to the passing game. And that's one thing that Bobo didn't have to his arsenal as a running back that could do all those things. I can remember Kenny catching a tunnel screen against Ohio State and taking to the house, I think, for our first score. And Trevor brings that dynamic package to the offense. And I also think he brings the downfield long speed that we didn't have this year. I always say, Kenny McIntosh could take a 40-yard run to the house, but I think Trevor could take a 60 to an 80-yard touchdown run to the house. So that's a different dynamic that he's going to bring to the table that we didn't have this year.
Terrence, great stuff. I appreciate your time. Sure enough, congratulations on the brand new head coaching position. We think that's well-deserved. We think you're a great addition to the ranks of head coaches here in the state of Georgia. We appreciate your insight, as always, about these Georgia Bulldogs. And I'm thankful for knowing that even as a head coach, you're still going to take time to join us here on the show, which I'm really, really grateful for your time always on. So, Terrence, it's great to be able to see you on video as we kind of break out a new studio here. And great to be talking some Georgia football with you. So I certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you, and everyone can check us out this fall over at Mount Vernon.
We certainly will be doing that, Terrence. Good stuff. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, great stuff there from Terrence Edwards, and I love what he says about when you think about what, not just Kenny McIntosh was in 2022, but what James Cook was for Georgia going back to 2021. Think about what Sony Michel at one point in time for Georgia had been. Georgia, the best of the dogs, oftentimes seems to have that kind of hybrid style running back who can almost function, if you want him to, like that slot receiver. And that's kind of what Kenny McIntosh became for UGA. Maybe that's a version of the role that Trevor Etienne could find himself in for this upcoming season there as well. Fun to think about that as a possibility. Let me tell you what else is fun. That's cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And I'll tell you, we yesterday had a great meeting kind of thinking about the DawgNation Cruise coming up in April. It was a lot of fun for me because this was the moment that all becomes really real. You know, we start talking about the DawgNation Cruise kind of a year in advance, and it's always kind of long-range planning until it's not, and at a certain point it becomes a very present tense conversation. I think for me yesterday, that's sort of what the DawgNation Cruise sort of became, because the one challenge we know we have is that, you know, we've had such a great time with DawgNation Cruises the last couple of years, and the job in 2024 is to be bigger and better than ever. That's why we're on an Oasis-class ship. Allure of the Seas, one of the biggest ever constructed. And in addition to the larger cruise ship with more fun neighborhoods and more fun entertainment options and more fun dining and bar and lounge options, there's also the need for greater DawgNation events. And yesterday, we just had a great meeting of kind of laying out all these sort of specially themed DawgNation events that we're going to do just for the UGA fans and the DawgNation folks on board Allure of the Seas with us in April. So it really is time to sort of make your final plans here on this. And if you've been on the fence about it, or if you've heard me talking about it and you've just been kind of waiting to pull the trigger, well, now is the time. Our friend Jessica Slater wants to help you out with this. Royal Caribbean believes that a great Royal Caribbean cruise vacation made even better when you use a terrific travel agent to help you plan it. She doesn't cost you anything. Royal Caribbean pays her for her expertise, making the experience good for you. So give her a call. Jessica Slater is her name, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can also email her at jslater@dreamvacations.com, and she's got a website there too. It's royaldogs.com, of course, spelled the way it's supposed to be, DAWGS, royaldogs.com. You can find out all about that. We'll see you on board Allure of the Seas coming up in April, and of course, I'm still basking in the glow a little bit from my time on Icon of the Seas last week. I continue to hear people all the time that come up to me, yeah, you're on Icon, tell me all about that. I had a guy in my neighborhood do that yesterday. It's just kind of fun to kind of think about that. People love that cruise ship right now, so that is a lot of fun. All right, let's go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean here right now. And I'm going to start with Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze was speaking to reporters briefly yesterday, and one of the things that Freeze kind of got some questions about was the fact that Auburn did not go into the transfer portal for a quarterback here this offseason. It seems like Auburn's going to be happy to kind of have a quarterback competition that includes last year's starter, Peyton Thorne, who came over from Michigan State, and some of the young guys who are part of this competition here right now. What Freeze said yesterday was the Twitter world had me taking everybody, meaning every quarterback that was in the portal, somehow rumored to go to Auburn. He says, I guess that's the hot thing to do right now. If a quarterback went to the portal, I started immediately getting messages, this is the one. But Freeze says, I actually really like our room. I wanted to try to build with high school kids like Hank Brown and Walker White and try to develop those guys, along with obviously the experience that Peyton Thorne brings to the table. I kind of want to see that through. Here is the problem, though, and this is what Auburn fans know full well, and perhaps some of those around Freeze, but they sort of knew too. Part of the reason why every time a quarterback popped in the portal, there'd be a rumor, seemingly connecting him to Auburn, is because that's how bad Auburn needs a quarterback. Now, listen, Georgia fans would look at Auburn and say, we don't want you to have a quarterback, so good that you didn't take one. But it's pretty obvious that whatever Peyton Thorne was against lesser competition in the Big Ten, that's mostly the kinds of teams that Thorne played better against, that didn't really translate very well to the SEC this past season. And I think that Hugh Freeze is a good coach, and I think that by and large, I expect him to have some success at Auburn. But what has kind of slowed down his early progress after, his kind of rookie season there with the Tigers, not a rookie in the SEC, but certainly a rookie at Auburn, what kind of slowed down his progress was they just didn't get much going from the quarterback position. And they got blown out by New Mexico State. They had the embarrassing sort of surrender of the touchdown at the end of the game against Alabama, which could have been the signature moment for the year. Really just kind of an ugly first year for Hugh Freeze at Auburn. They need some sort of success to hang their hat on for 2024, and it is a very big bet to say, yeah, we'll go with a couple of young guys and Peyton Thorne. We'll have a quarterback competition involving just these guys and hope it works out well. Boy, for a guy who really needs something to happen positive for him in 2024, that's a pretty significant bet on the part of Freeze right there. All right, moving on. An interesting story that may not seem all that interesting at first blush, but boy, it's got reverberations going through college football right now. There's a guy named Jeff Hafley, and Hafley's been the Boston College head coach. Now, Boston College is not much, but Boston College is a power coaching job. It's in the ACC. Well, Hafley has left Boston College's head coach to go be a coordinator in the NFL. And this is certainly eye-opening because even though it's the NFL, it sort of seemed as a downgrade, leaving a major college head coaching position to go be an assistant coach in the NFL. And the reasons for doing so get a lot of attention. This is what Pete Thamel says on Twitter about all of this. Hafley's reasons for taking this coordinator job are rooted in both the overall state of college football and the opportunity to work for one of the NFL's most respected franchise. The quote here is, he wants to go coach football again in a league that's all about football, a source told ESPN. College coaching has become fundraising, NIL, and recruiting your own team and transfers. There's no time to coach football anymore. And it's the last part of that that probably matters the most to a lot of these coaches. It's not just the recruiting part that's always existed. It's the need to constantly, without any seeming parameters whatsoever, it's that need to constantly re-recruit your roster that I think is causing a lot of these coaches to sort of move on. Now, there's an aspect of some people are like, I don't care about Jeff Hafley. I don't care, where he coaches here. But you can't, I would say, completely ignore the brain drain that is going on in college football right now. We see this at the top end where guys like Hafley are leaving to the NFL. What you don't often notice, but I can promise you is also true, is down at the low end, the low ranks of college coaching, you also see it there too, where guys who are a position coach at maybe some Group of 5 school or some FCS school look around and say, you know what, I'm going back to high school. And we see this, college coaches becoming high school. We've seen this a couple of times in Georgia here over the course of the last couple of years, where college coaches leave college, they come back to high school because they can make a 6-figure salary, they can perhaps coach for 20, 30 years if they want to, and all of a sudden that's becoming a more appealing life than the grind of college where you really just have, sort of no protection from the rules here whatsoever. People are noticing that, and it may not be a big deal to some, but it is certainly seemingly a big deal to others. In fact, let me kind of give you some of this here. What some of the prominent analysts are saying about all of this. So Joel Klatt from Fox, this is a respected guy. I've sort of grown to like Klatt more recently than perhaps I, did at one point in time. This is what he said about Jeff Hafley leaving. He says, I'm really happy for him. This is clearly what he desired. Meeting with him were some of my favorite production meetings in my career. Klatt goes on to say, though, I'm also deeply frustrated that college football is in the state it is, where we'll continue to lose great coaches because, as Joel Klatt says, our structure sucks. Kirk Herbstreit also kind of weighing in there, too. He says college football in its current state will be seeing more and more coaches heading to the NFL. Without boundaries and regulation that make sense, coaches get that real opportunity in the NFL, and they're going to be gone. Herbstreit says this trend's going to continue until there is a new governing body that creates a CBA, he wants a collective bargaining agreement with players, entity, or a union that includes, NIL, transfer portal, and eventually revenue sharing. Herbstreit says the sport is spiraling out of control, as we know, and many of these coaches are not sticking around and waiting, just a new reality for the sport. So Klatt, the biggest guy from Fox, Herbstreit, the biggest guy from ESPN, sort of sounding the alarm right now using the Jeff Hafley news as a kind of reason to do that. And my only point is this, is that I know all of this sort of is moving in the direction towards, well, you got to have collective bargaining, you got to have, players classified as employees, you got to have the revenue sharing, you got to have all of that. All I'm saying is I do not believe that is necessarily the easy button that some people think that it is, because unintended consequences do exist, and complex systems cannot be easily manipulated and then control the outcome of the manipulation that you participated in. That's just not quite the way things work. The one thing I've always wished is that people could just sort of see that in the sort of, silos of sports, you've got sports that are sort of obviously amateur. Think about what, like, say, the U.S. amateur golf tournament used to be. You've got sports that are obviously professional, sort of like what the NFL kind of is. And you've got college athletics, which I believe sort of sit at its own lunch table. That's just always the way that people have a tendency to want to put college athletics in one of the other silos. Well, it's not like other amateur sports that are obviously amateur, and it's not quite like full-fledged professional sports either, because most of the players who play even major college football don't have any real market value. Most of them couldn't really command any kind of true free agent contract. We see that kind of taking place here right now. So it's not a full-fledged professional sport in kind of the same way. And yet people still kind of want to push it into sort of one of these silos or the other. And I just think that smart people have to sort of make college athletics in sort of its own category. It's still something sort of like amateurism, even though it generates a ton of revenue because of how popular that it is. But I don't think you want to live in a world in which college football is pushed into, or college athletics, but we'll talk college football here, college football being pushed into just being a minor league for the NFL. Because if you look around, NBA G League, minor league baseball, minor league sports are just not popular. They're just not. They're not money makers. Minor league baseball contracts. No one really watches the G League. We've had all these upstart professional football leagues that can barely even get through a season because somehow, some way, minor league sports are just not popular. And if you work very, very hard to make college football become a professional version of the next step towards the NFL, then some of the residue and stench that kind of plagues other minor league sports, I think you can't help but see some of that eventually creep into college football as well if you're not careful. So we'll see where this heads next, and we'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Now, our bandwagon for Georgia basketball did not quite roll on last night the way we wanted it to. Georgia does lose to Alabama, had a big lead, lets it slip away. I mentioned this to our video audience a moment ago, and I'll say this to the larger audience here right now. Here is the one thing I can say about Georgia at the moment. This is pretty clearly still a very entertaining team to watch. And this is still pretty clearly a team that I think is worth attention, worth a little bit of discussion, but obviously taking that next step in terms of getting the kind of like high-level wins that truly make you sort of an NCAA tournament team. That's not quite where Georgia is here right now, but hope is not all lost. Georgia does have another opportunity on Saturday, a home game against South Carolina. This game's already sold out. South Carolina is solidly in the NCAA tournament field based on all these like sort of bracketology projections. They upset Tennessee the other day, but Georgia's also already beaten South Carolina on the road once this season. They have a chance to get that win. They do, and we'll be happy if they're able to. But this is clearly a good team working to get better, and obviously in a league like the SEC, the next step towards being a true tournament contender requires beating some pretty high-level competition. Last night against Alabama, just not quite able to get that done. But we certainly wish them well as they move on and get ready to play the South Carolina Gamecocks coming up on Saturday. And as we say goodbye to you here today, handful of golden shoes on our way out the door. We'll go ahead and show you the first one here. Fletcher Proctor, our buddy, writes in on this. I'd kind of laughed the other day about Tennessee cheating in all these sports, despite the fact they really don't have much in the way of success. So Fletcher uses that to send the meme. You see The Rock there saying, "We're really an everything school." That's what Tennessee likes to say, good at everything. The response back is 1998, last national championship football, no Final Fours in men hoops, and 0 College World Series trophies. Then you see The Rock looking stunned there. Very funny use of that meme by Fletcher Proctor. Certainly worthy of a golden shoe there on that. How about our next one here there as well? Frankie Fibonacci, who likes to go, one of our YouTube commenters, likes to go back and forth with one of the Alabama fans in our comment section, sharing this graphic that says an Alabama draft pick has never scored in a Super Bowl. Hashtag golden shoe, Frankie says. Certainly worthy of that. Anytime you can make fun of Alabama, that'll always get you straight to the front of the line. So good stuff from Frankie, taking a little jab there at our buddy G. Grace. And then finally, big news coming out of the University of Georgia yesterday that alcohol will now be, at least beer anyway, beer and seltzer, will now be sold in Sanford Stadium in the fall of 2024. Connor Riley writing that story at DawgNation.com. Paul Herndon checks in to say, well, guess what? We now know where the NIL funding issue how it's going to be taken care of there at the University of Georgia. Plenty of money perhaps being made on all of that as Dog fans have some reason to toast and cheer inside of Sanford Stadium here this fall. We'll give Paul a golden shoe there for that there as well. Lousy, stinking Gators. I don't know if they sell beer in the swamp or not, but if they do, that's a reason for Florida fans to drown their sorrows because it's been 1,181 days since the lousy, stinking Gators have beaten Georgia. That is our Gator Hater Updater. We'll see all of you back here tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, when you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. R.S. Andrews has got you on all of that. So I was following some of your plight a little earlier. It sounds like we're having, I don't know what going on in terms of showing up on the various platforms, but it looks like that's all squared away now. So hopefully everybody has found their way here, and we'll get your comments as we do. Let me go to DawgNation.com, start over there, and we'll see how everybody's doing. DT says he's got Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network. Has got Brock Bowers drafted at 15 to Indianapolis, and Amarius Mims going at 20 to the Steelers. How interesting would that be if you end up seeing a Mims-Jones sort of bookend pairing for the offensive tackles there for the Steelers? He said basically the same thing I did. It'd be funny to see Mims and Jones, Darnell Washington, the same line. Yeah, boy, you talk about a fun thing for Georgia fans to see. That'd be crazy. Crazy to see. Morris Rich says that I'm not crazy about beer being sold at the stadium. Makes me reconsider taking my young grandsons to the game. Am I wrong or worried for nothing? Well, I'm not going to tell anybody they're ever worried about anything for nothing because your reasons are your own. Here's what I will tell you, though, is that, and this is going to come across like a joke, I don't necessarily mean for it to, I don't know that the presence of beer inside the stadium is going to make the average Georgia fan any drunker than he already would be. And I said it comes across a little bit funny, I guess, but I mean that seriously, there's a lot of drinking that goes on outside the stadium. And, I'm sort of in a different position of life than I used to be. I used to be one of those guys that loved the tailgating and being out there with friends and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm a father of young children, and so I'm a little bit more aware of my surroundings when you go to a game like that. The one thing I always think is, and this is not just the opposing fans, sometimes I think this about Georgia fans too. I hope that, we're not sitting, because a lot of times it'll be my wife and kids who are sitting without me because I'm in the press box. I hope they're not sitting next to someone that's going to ruin their experience because my kids don't like stuff like that. Teenagers, older people, they maybe laugh at it and think it's funny or whatever. But if young kids see an adult acting really, really crazy, it makes them nervous, makes them scared. So I think more about things through their eyes now than I would, perhaps as a young 20-something or something like that when – the more the merrier. Everybody, being, loud and raucous. And obviously I love a loud crowd when it comes to Sanford Stadium, of course, but I think there's a way to get loud without being sort of falling down drunk. In fact, if you're falling down drunk, you're probably not contributing overall to the noise level in the stadium anyway. So the point is that there's obviously no shortage of drinking around all college football games. I don't know that the presence of beer inside the stadium is going to make someone who is like really, really drunk all that much drunker, if that's proper grammar. The various tenses of the word drink always kind of get me kind of tripped up here a little bit. Like the one thing I have not heard, because I actually haven't read too much on this yet other than just sort of knowing that it's out there. The one thing I haven't read too much about is what the actual process for getting the beer is going to be, because I have to confess, I think there's a lot of things that are great about Sanford Stadium, and I think that the athletic department, by and large, does a lot of really nice fan service for UGA fans. I have to confess, I don't particularly think the concession stand situation is all that sort of positive. I don't think the concession stand experience is necessarily a great one for Georgia fans. And sometimes I go to the concession stand, even though I sit in the press box. I'm a little bit of a picky eater. Every now and then, if the press box meal is kind of not quite to my liking, I just sort of, sneak out of the press box, go buy something from the concession stand. My family goes to games a lot. As I said before, there are a lot of things about Georgia that are a great experience. I don't know that the concession stand experience is always great, and I also don't know necessarily what you necessarily do about that because, Sanford Stadium is a very old stadium, and old stadiums have very tight corridors, those very narrow concourses, which makes sometimes concession service a little bit hard. And so, it's not, I would say, based on, a lot of the way the stadium is constructed, it's not like you're going to go back and forth and get 10 beers during the game. I just don't think you're going to be able to do that. You got to get through the very tight aisles where people are sitting, up to the concession stand, stand in line, fight your way through that, then back. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of opportunity for sort of like negativity on something like that, because I just don't think it's that easy to get to the concession stand to get the beer. So I do get the idea of, hey, there's a certain level of like, drunkenness that you don't necessarily want to see, but I don't know that the actual presence of beer in the stadium changes all that much, given the fact that most of the drinking would take place outside the stadium anyway. Let's see what else. Baggins and Friends says there'll be a lot of beer spilt on non-drinkers. Yeah, maybe that's the case. I mean, listen, I get the idea that, that's not something that's happened before. And as I said before, I go to games with young kids, so I'm not like, I don't have like flippant disregard for this as a topic, but I actually don't share an overwhelming level of concern that this is going to make things, all that much worse. Because, by and large, I don't think it's that bad anyway. As I said before, we've all seen the college football fan that kind of ruins somebody's experience, and admittedly, sometimes that might be a Georgia fan for some people. We've all seen that, but I'd say that experience is pretty rare, thankfully speaking. I'd say that's pretty rare. Let's see what else. Scott Harris says, I guess I need to get into the fake license business. So that's like a serious thing now. Now, listen, the official position of DawgNation Daily is that everyone should always follow all laws and follow every rule too. But obviously, one of the things you may have heard is that sometimes people do use, like fake IDs. That's a thing that does happen for people younger than 21, which we do not endorse, do not condone. But like when I was a kid in like the 90s, and like I really wasn't doing this kind of thing back then. I'm being serious. I actually really wasn't. But it's fairly like people had kind of a sort of very relaxed response to all that. But a fake ID now is a pretty serious infraction, right? You get some real trouble for that, right? It seems like that kind of thing has changed. And also, the whole idea of an ID is sort of a different experience now. BMAC says, when I was at Tennessee last year, people sitting next to me spent more time in line to purchase their beer than they did to watch the game. With the results of the game, I didn't blame them. They were all Tennessee fans. Yeah, so that's the thing is like, if you're like really into drinking beer in the stadium, which is, it's there for sale, it's your right to do that, you are going to miss a good portion of the game. And that's I see that with like the Braves games too. I feel like the concession experience at Truist Park's gotten a little bit better, but I feel like for a while there it was just like really slow. And I'm a huge Braves fan. I love Truist Park, don't get me wrong. I just feel like the concession experience sometimes was a little slow. Maybe I'm just impatient. Maybe that's all that it is. I feel like they've actually gotten a lot better about that. But they also, brand new stadium have these really wide concourses, and it's much easier to move around. I think in a way, this would be actually kind of a good use. Like a lot of people weren't super happy they made the bridge a ticketed area for game day, but that sort of area over there, kind of west end zone, and that sort of south corner, that's all getting bigger and more expansive. Doing some of the beer stuff over there, we just got a little bit more room for lines, a little bit more room to move around. That actually might be a pretty good thing because, previously in that kind of area we sort of think of as sort of the alumni part of the stadium, man, that concourse behind those sort of 100 level, lower level bleachers, man, that thing's this wide. It is hard to get through there. Hard to get through there. All right, let me go to the other comment sections here for a moment. Let me go to Facebook. See how people are doing over there. All right, let's see what's going on. Mike Mazzell says, back in the 1970s, we could easily change our birthday on the back of the license. The other thing, which is kind of funny, the other thing you could do back in, like, say, the 1990s was, if you went and, like, said, I lost my license, you just get another one. And, people would sometimes do that and they'd have all these various licenses. But you can't do stuff like that anymore. It's all gotten very serious, which it should be because, people should follow the laws. Let's see what else. Craig Jones says, I don't want to spend my money on tickets and sit next to a drunk person. Kids at least start drying out while in the stadium. You can spot the drunk students a mile away. It will only get worse now. Maybe so. And, I do get the idea that nobody wants to have their experience ruined. But as I said before, I go to a lot of games. And, I go to every game. My family goes to a lot of games. And I am hyper. I mean, listen, when my wife is at the game with the kids, I'm texting them 1,000 times. Everything okay? Y'all good? 1,000 times a game. I'm doing that. And honestly, they're always fine. There's obviously the picture we have in our mind of the fan that sort of ruins the experience for somebody. But I'd say that we don't have a lot of confrontation with that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I'd say it's a pretty big rarity. And look, even like for the most part, the very drunk Georgia fans are still fairly affable. But now that is also when I was more of a true tailgater, that was sort of my preferred style which I didn't enjoy, having a beverage or two prior to the game. But I never really wanted to do anything during the game. I was always really afraid of getting kicked out. If I ever had like a flask or something like that and got kicked out of the stadium, I'd be so devastated. I'd be so sad about not being able to see the game. So I never wanted to do anything like that. I've always been a little bit of a stickler for the rules about stuff like that. I'm a little bit of a librarian maybe. So always a little bit, concerned about that. But also this thing of, if I was too overserved, I can't follow the football. Football's a complicated sport. It's hard enough to follow when you're stone cold sober. It's another thing if you've had, 87 cocktails, you just got back from the beer line. If you're trying to figure out, okay, who's in for Georgia in this nickel package, all of a sudden that gets to be a little hard to do at a certain point. Let's see what else. So Scotty Barnes said the same thing. I don't usually start drinking until the game so I can be coherent in the fourth quarter. So there you go. Yeah. Everybody's got their own strategy about stuff like that. Mike Mazzell says the Commanders are hiring Dan Quinn as head coach. We didn't get a chance to ask Jake about that yesterday. I wonder what he thinks. Dan Quinn is the coach of the Commanders. Boy, that's a tough situation. Kevin Cook says he hates the noon stars because it's tough drinking moonshine at 9 a.m., which is very funny. You got Dan Quinn of the Commanders, and you got Kevin drinking moonshine. So everybody's having a good time over here on YouTube. All right, let's get some. I should say Facebook. Let's get some YouTube comments now. Blazer Dog says, I'm pretty sure I witnessed a divorce last Georgia game I went to. I mean, you do have some of that now. You definitely see if you're walking, because here's a lot of times what I'll see. So you go to the game, I go to the bookstore after the game, you have the post-game show. And you leave the bookstore to now start making your way back home, and you're going across campus. And you're seeing the sort of last remnants of whoever's still around. Now, you do see some stuff there. People breaking up. People, whatever, like you do definitely see some people who, kind of just didn't handle themselves very well. I mean, Georgia football can be a little bit of an amateur hour if you're not careful. And late on campus, well after the game is over, you do see some examples of that from people of all ages. Jonathan Aaron says, go ahead and finish it off. Ain't nothing finer in the land, which is a pretty good point in terms of, Georgia fans' reputation, the fact that one of the most popular, chants involving UGA includes the phrase drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan. I think it probably tells you everything you need to know. Stick D says, does your inner basketball Larry Munson telling you NIT or bust? Well, listen, you can joke, but I mean, gosh, how long has it been since Georgia even made the NIT tournament? That wouldn't be, anything for this, unfortunately, this organization to shake a stick at necessarily. It also makes me think back to the time when Larry Munson used to do basketball games. Y'all remember Munson doing basketball? I remember him doing Falcons games for a little while, and I also remember him doing Georgia basketball too. Paul Moon says, I remember when there was a Five Guys where the Chick-fil-A is now. That's right there at the corner. It's the original varsity location. He says they stayed open till 4 a.m. for like a week, and the craziness of DT made them change that policy real quick. Yeah, I mean, if you stay out late enough in downtown, you're going to see some truly, truly crazy stuff. Let's see what else. Quabna Fields also gave you the nothing finer in the land thing. So the YouTube dogs all kind of on the same page over here. Jay Shipe says, I used to time travel on liquor back in my 20s. I got tired of people asking me, you know what you did last night, right? Yeah, which is very funny. I can only imagine what some of, Jay's, Sunday morning regrets must have felt like, back then. That's probably a pretty amazing story in its own right, for sure. I will say that as you get a little older, I don't know if everybody else is like this, but I definitely like this. Like, I still enjoy having a beverage. My wife and I get a dinner, we'll have some wine together or something like that. But I do feel like at a certain point I start enjoying some of that a lot less than I used to. Not to the point that I'd never drink anything ever again, but I definitely sort of find it to be less enjoyable than I used to. I like feeling, really refreshed in the morning. I like, I just get better sleep. I just like all of that better. Like I said, I'm not, not completely like never do it again, but I do find myself sort of wanting to do it a little bit less. Not always, but occasionally. G. Gray says, have you ever seen a college campus the next day after a game? It looks like a hurricane came through. Yeah, that is true. And, there's really only so much that can be done about that because there's just not enough trash cans, right? You have to have, it's not like there's just 8 gazillion trash cans, right? So I think one of the things a lot of the campuses have kind of gone to is the idea of, okay, you fill a garbage bag, you just sort of leave it right there on the ground, and the, sanitation staff sort of take care of that. But if you ever go to, like, say, New York City for a big event, like a New Year's Eve, or it all kind of looks the same, right? When you get large numbers of people in a situation in a space like that, there's going to be some waste left behind, no doubt about it. UGA Boy for Life Brunetti, I can't read that. Stick D's also talking about the price of some of these, what are supposed to be quick service restaurants, and I'm not going to mention any by name, but the price of some of these, what are supposed to be quick service restaurants, are outrageous. It is true. Outrageous. Outrageous. All right, let me go to the other comment sections for a moment. Let's see what's going on over here. Jerry Popham says, my very first Dogs game in Jacksonville was by far my worst experience of all. Why? Because I felt like I had to live up. This is a very good point. What Jerry is saying is true. He says he had a bad experience at the Georgia-Florida game because he felt he had to live up to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party reputation, and to say I started getting, very, very drunk in the motorhome down from St. Simon's and was fully lubed throughout the game. You see, there is a lot of bad stories that have started with, well, it's the cocktail party, and so therefore I've got to act a certain kind of way. It's the same thing like going to Vegas or, a lot of things like that where there's this sort of cultural expectation that things are going to go a certain way, and it is true. A lot of very bad stories have kind of gone that way for sure. Yeah, I can't believe that Dan Quinn is going to be the new Commanders coach if that's indeed true. That's wild. That is wild. Let's see what else. Doug Rayburn also pointing out that Larry Munson also did Braves games along with Milo Hamilton. Now, I've never heard that. I wonder if there's any audio of that anywhere. I had heard that he had done them. I just never heard any of the audio of that. But I wonder if there's any of that out there. That'd be kind of interesting to hear. Let's see what else. Craig Jones says, I have great experiences for the most part. He says, where I sit has a lot to do with it. Happy, slightly intoxicated fans are generally okay. Yeah, that's true. I would say that, somebody who's had a little bit sometimes is more fun to sit by than somebody who hasn't had anything. But there is also that there's sort of a Goldilocks zone of like, hey, a little bit intoxicated, kind of fun to be around, perhaps better than something else. But then you start taking it to a certain higher level, and you're like, oh, gosh, what's going to happen here? Because in Sanford Stadium, the seats are very close together. And so this is always the thing for me, like I said before, you take kids to the game. What you don't realize is not only are you sitting very close to people side by side, but the row in front of you is like right here, and the row behind you is like right here. That's as close to other humans as you're likely ever going to be. So if somebody is problematic, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but if somebody's problematic, boy, you are breathing their same air, man. That is tough. I do get that. That is tough. Let's see what else. Let me go back over to DawgNation.com, see how they're doing. Randy Glass says the departure of the Boston College coach should slightly concern everyone, even Georgia, about Kirby Smart. I mean, I don't want to be like too, so alarmist about that, but it is the kind of thing you got to pay attention to. And there's a certain kind of, I don't know, like media person or sort of social media presence that loves making a big show about sort of disregarding all of this. And I sort of liken this to someone if they said, well, people say you're supposed to go to the gym and exercise, but I didn't exercise yesterday and I'm still fine. People sort of expect there to be like an immediate ramification for some bad decisions. And obviously that's not the way that things have a tendency to go. Sometimes the consequences felt later, and sometimes the consequence is felt in excess of the, of the bad decision. And this is one of those things where I think this is like, is it the Ernest Hemingway line about, things happening slowly then suddenly? Is that Hemingway who said that? That's what I sort of worry about for college football, is that we're sort of slowly moving towards something. We're going to blink our eyes and realize there has been a big sudden change that you can't go back and easily fix. And you say, well, what would you do about that? Well, here's what I would do. There are clearly a small handful of players who clearly have greater monetary value than the kind of typical relationship that college football players have with his college football team. There's clearly a handful of players that are just in greater value than that. I sort of wonder, would we just be better off if they went and played somewhere else? If they're just biding their time, waiting 36 months to go to the NFL, then just let the NFL pay them, I should say. Or let them challenge the NFL's rule about you got to wait 3 years to go to the NFL. Like, why does every attempt to kind of form some rules around college football get completely destroyed, but the NFL gets to restrict labor and restrict, in terms of, well, you can't come here until you're 3 years out of college and until we've, benefited off the back of college football, who's going to market you and develop you. After that, we'll let you come into our league, but you're not allowed to come until you've been through this car wash first. If you want to challenge something, you got to go challenge that to the NFL. Say, hey, I'm a future NFL player. Pay me now. Let me play now. Don't restrict my labor. Don't restrict my trade. So we might just sort of be better off saying to a small handful of players who truly have greater value than what college football has typically provided, why don't you just go somewhere else and go do something else? It'll be lesser talent level, but I'm not sure the average fan would notice the difference. I'm not sure I would notice the difference. As I said before, we had all kinds of opt-outs for Florida State in the Orange Bowl. There were still 10 million people watching on television. The difference in talent between sort of the A-level player and the B-plus level player, or even the B-level player, I'm not really quite so sure that makes a noticeable difference on television, because people don't watch college football because it's the highest level of the sport. That's what the NFL is. But college football is popular for completely different reasons. So there's that. Here's the other thing, and I know this is going to get me in trouble maybe, but I'm going to say it anyway. What if we just paid these guys under the table? Allegedly, that's what was going on for a long time anyway. What if we just did that? I mean, who says no to that? You keep the system in place. It comes across as a little bit of a sham, a little bit of a charade, but it's still an operating system. So for like so-and-so player who's clearly worth something, and I'm talking about worth even more than just the, sort of basic NIL deal, for somebody who's got some real value, what was so bad about allegedly paying those guys under the table? Like, doesn't that just sort of fix everything to kind of go back to the sort of old school 1970s, SMU style model? I mean, doesn't that just sort of solve everything? Like was that such a bad system? I don't know. Let's see what else. BMAC says that Georgia would have boat raced Florida State even if it had all of its players. I know our buddy Danny Cannell was talking something about that on social media yesterday. Scott Harris says, what are the tiebreaker rules for the SEC championship game with so many teams? Could there be a log jam at the top? There certainly could be. I don't really know what the tiebreakers will be. Typically, when you get kind of beyond, this sort of sort of the basic, record-oriented tiebreakers. Eventually, one of the things that breaks ties oftentimes are rankings in the college football playoff top 25. I don't know if it's going to function that way or not, but I'll try to find out your answer. But I will say that you're bringing up an important topic. We've seen this already in college football the last couple of years. The Pac-12, the Big 12 are both like I think I just lost my IFB, but I think y'all can still hear me. The Pac-12 and the Big 12 both had, absence of divisions, and you made the college football, or I should say you made the conference championship game, on the basis of whoever had the best two records. And the byproduct of all of that is that very late in the season, you would have a very complicated way of figuring out who was going to make the conference championship game. So one of the good things about divisional play is it's fairly straightforward what needs to happen. This team advances, it's fairly straightforward. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying it's going to be something we all have to kind of get used to a little bit. I think we're going to see a much more complicated method and manner for determining who's playing in these conference championship games moving forward. And in this case, the SEC championship. I definitely think you're going to see more of that here coming up very, very soon. All right, so it's almost time for me to go. If my batteries are dying, that means it's time for me to go. Baggett's and Friends says under the table wouldn't work because the government wants their share, which obviously makes a lot of sense. But all these stories from the 1970s, 1980s, so-and-so getting casino chips or so-and-so getting, whatever else. I mean, people aren't paying taxes on that. And listen, you'll go to jail for that. So you need to pay your taxes. They will put you in jail for that. Government doesn't play about stuff like that. But for all these alleged under-the-table things in the past, I mean, I'm guessing that those under-the-table payments didn't come with a 1099 form. So, how is all that kind of taken care of in the past? And if it's under, $14,000, it can be classified as a gift anyway. I don't have all the answers. I don't. I'm just saying that I would work as hard as I could to provide something that felt like compensation for players within a system that still feels like amateurism for the sport overall. I just think you get in trouble when you start trying to manipulate complex systems. I just think that produces unintended consequences that are not properly accounted for. All right, final comments. We're out of here. Back on Facebook. Scotty Barnes says, I heard them talking about the chicken box, and now it's time to go. I see y'all talking about chicken in here a lot. I do see that. I am starting to get a little hungry. Zach Adams talking about dragging Dabo Swinney. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow. We actually have some early point spreads on some of those big games for Georgia for the upcoming season. Georgia, a very big favorite right now over Clemson. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Kind of interesting. Let us go back over to YouTube for a second. Nature Gator says that Mike White is losing at UGA the way he lost at Florida. The man just gets out coached in games repeatedly. Yeah, I don't know if I would – I mean, I get the point you're saying. Obviously, Florida fans had soured on Mike White. I understand that. But this is where I'm going to be very honest with you, Nature. Florida's a basketball program and Georgia's a basketball program are very different things. And I don't take great pleasure in saying that. But Florida's won national championships, and Georgia has not really won much of anything basketball. So, maybe Florida fans were right to sour on Mike White. Maybe they weren't. But Mike White has clearly put a professional veneer on Georgia basketball that I don't think this program's had in quite some time. I really don't. And I think I said this yesterday. The best that I can tell, Georgia's got two real big problems. It gives up way too many offensive rebounds, which is really hard to coach against because, whoever the better rebounding team has, that has a tendency to sort of show up for the full 40 minutes. And Georgia does not protect the front of the rim particularly well. That's two things that good basketball teams typically do. Georgia doesn't do either of those two things very well. And at this stage, I'm not really quite so sure how you coach that into this UGA team. But they're better than they've been. And in terms of the talent that's on its way, I'm not here to tell you they're going to win the national championship or even go to the Sweet 16. But is Mike White being the architect of a great level of improvement for Georgia basketball right now? I don't think there's any doubt that he is. Obviously, last night's game, leaves some disappointment. But my gosh, the fact that we're even talking about Georgia basketball in February is an upgrade from where things have been. Crow King says, yeah, at least he's making us respectable and fun to watch. That's it. They are respectable. You don't have a night off when you're playing UGA, and they are fun to watch. Fans are clearly enjoying this right now. And I'm not saying those are my only expectations, but those are my first expectations. That's the first expectation that you got to have is just be somewhat relevant, bring fans back into the tent, and that's pretty clearly what's happening here right now. Kate Shad says, I think NIL was designed to allow players to earn once they are playing. It was not to entice them to come to your school. So, Kate Shad, here's what I would say about that. I'm going to take my headphones off because at this point in time, I'm working. So here's what I'd say about that. We're going to get ready to wrap up. The real purpose of NIL was to provide some sort of compensation for players that didn't have to come from the actual schools themselves. And so this whole notion of, well, NIL is supposed to be about this, it's not supposed to be about that. The truth is the people that established the idea of NIL, they never really cared about that to begin with. All they cared about is, okay, at least it's not us that's having to do the paying. It's going to be the Moneybacks booster. It's going to be the very eager fan. It's going to be the local business that wants, so-and-so on his TV commercials, whatever it's supposed to be. At least it's not us paying it. And I really think that I'm talking about the powers that be within college athletics, nobody really thought about this stuff much beyond that of, well, as long as it's not us paying it, and as long as we're not having to classify these guys as employees, whatever, difficult to define, impossible to enforce system that exists around NIL, we're sort of fine with that being whatever it is because at least it's not us having to foot the bill for the money. So that's kind of part of the problem is that, it's kind of like with like criteria for like who plays in the college football playoff or the old BCS of we're looking at who you beat, but we're not looking at margin of victory because that's kind of distasteful because that makes it seem like you're running up the score on purpose. You can say that, but the actual truth is if so-and-so beat somebody by 28 points and somebody else beat him by 3, of course you're going to notice the difference. There are a lot of things in college sports that are sort of we say one thing, but we actually do another. In fact, the purpose of a system is what it does. And, in the case of NIL, no matter what the system is supposed to be, the actual purpose of the system is paying the players, and whichever, program can induce the most boosters to pay and pay the most, of course they're going to get better access to better players. No matter what you describe the system as being, the purpose of a system is what it does, and that is what an NIL system actually does. G. Grace Bama Boy, even though there are obviously hard and fast rules about conversations between the collectives and the programs, G. Grace says he doesn't believe that of course the head coach has some sort of say in some of this. And I would say within confines of the rules and within interpretations of those rules, I would say that G. Grace is probably right about that across the board, I would assume anyway. But once again, all of this kind of comes down to how you interpret some of these rules. Crow King 123 says that Stegman Coliseum moving the student section has helped a lot. I agree. I always want students as close to the floor as you can get them, right there, as congregated together as you can get them. I do think that makes a big impact. I think that makes a big impact. Stick D says, I understand Georgia holding back on high school recruits that have not played, but they should have paid the price with a proven commodity like Caleb Downs. He had nothing left to prove or earn. Yeah, we'll obviously never know what actually happened. I'm talking about tangibly on the record when it relates to Caleb Downs and his NIL because, Downs sort of sidestepped some of that when he spoke to the media last week. But you can certainly, make the case there on that. There's also a case to be made that, safety is not a premium position. It's great to have great safety. Georgia's got one of the best in the country in Malachi Starks. But the positions that you may have to spend big on the future if you want these guys, it's defensive line, it's quarterback, it's wide receiver. It's these positions that truly have greater value and probably do command more in the NIL space. There could come a point where if you want the kind of defensive lineman that we're used to seeing Georgia have, swimming in pretty deep waters in terms of NIL may be about the only way you're able to do that. All right. Let me get one more from Crow King, and we're getting ready to go. He says it's really dumb. Shouldn't be fans with jobs. It should be the fans' job to pour money into the collectives when the institutions are making millions and millions of dollars on these new TV deals. And that's like what more and more people, I think, are also kind of coming around to as well, which is, A, it's really hard to raise large sums of money on the basis of small, regularly occurring donations. Anybody who's ever done a political campaign or a church building or anything like that will tell you, big amounts of money coming from small donors, it's just really hard to get there, that way, just hard to do. So it's A, hard to do, and B, a lot of fans are going to look around and say, hey, I'm having a hard time paying my mortgage. I'm supposed to buy an inside linebacker, when the sport's making money hand over fist. That's kind of leading us to this thing of, well, why don't you guys pay them? You're the ones that are raking in all these millions of dollars. You guys are having the big TV contracts. Why don't you guys pay them? And that's probably where we're heading on all of this. I'm just not quite so sure as that change comes, it's going to prove to be a change for the better. And that's not because I don't want the players to get compensated. I do believe to a certain extent players deserve, some compensation. I believe the kind of thing where, it leaves players as a employee of a professional team as opposed to students, at a school. I don't know if that's going to end up being a change for the better, but it's going to probably move that direction whether I want it to or whether you want it to or not. So all we can say is we'll be talking about that stuff as it takes place. Really good comments. Really appreciate all of you being here. And a lot of fun here today on the program. So check out R.S. Andrews online, rsandrews.com, for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price is promised. You can trust them on all that, including getting your heating system tuned back up to factory fresh specs. So find them online today to do that for you, keeping you toasty and warm all winter long. It's rsandrews.com. That website, one more time, rsandrews.com. You have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. R.S. Andrews cool down when it's all said and done. We'll look forward to talking to you then.